Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. ki jai, Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Gantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. All glories to the Assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Where does it begin then? So, what does it mean?
That is on the board, you have to start reading 45.
Yeah.
From not 8 verses to the end.
Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Continuing to read from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, Chapter 15, Text 45. Gata dvana shamo tatra majanun mardana divi Nivimvasitvaruchiram Divyasraganamandito Gatadvana shamo tatra Majanam mardana divi Nivimvasitvaruchiram Divyasraganamandito Gata, gone. Advanashrama, whose weariness from being upon the road, Tatra, there, in their home, Majjana, by bathing, Unmardana, massaging, Adibi, and so on. Nivim, in undergarments. Vasitva, being dressed. Ruchiram, charming. Divya, transcendental. Sra, with garlands. Gandha, and fragrances. Mandito, decorated. By translation, by being bathed and massaged, the two young lords were relieved of the weariness caused by walking on the country roads. Then they were dressed in attractive robes and decorated with transcendental garlands and fragrances. So we're reading now of the 15th chapter, which has been of the 10th canto, which has been translated by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada said that at the time, up to the 14th chapter, the Bhagavatam had been printed in 30 volumes. And Prabhupada said it would take another 30 volumes to finish the Bhagavatam. So Prabhupada was planning to write extensive purports to the 10th canto. Somehow or other, that didn't happen. Of course, he wrote the Krishna book. And in one sense, the Krishna book is containing a lot of information. We do have the purports of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur to these verses, and I'll just comment a little bit from them. I think in that way I'm not overstepping anyone, but rather just following in the footsteps of the Acharyas so that we can complete the chapter nicely. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is saying that actually Krishna and Balaram were not asramo. They were not weary because they're God. Right? And however, playing the part of human beings, they appear tired, and thus the word sramo is used. After entering their house, Krishna and Balaram were relieved, gata, of their apparent tiredness from walking on the road, advan, by bathing and dressing in attractive robes. Yes, Krishna is acting as if he is human, but he is not. So in some ways the Lord is acting during his pastimes to attract his devotees, because that is his purpose. At the same time, though, we also know that Yogamaya is working upon the Lord, and that sometimes the Lord is not just acting human, but sometimes he is also limited by Yogamaya. Sometimes he doesn't know something, although he's all-knowing. But because he agrees voluntarily to be controlled by Yogamaya, then sometimes he also forgets due to Yogamaya. So in this way, we see some interesting elements of the human side of the Supreme Lord and the not human side, the transcendental side, simultaneously, and both are there. But yes, Krishna is always the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When he was 3 months old and Putana came and Putana saw this child For a moment she thought, this child is so powerful, this child can destroy the entire universe. Then she said, nah, this is my mind. This is my mind. It's just a child, you know. It's a baby. But can he destroy the whole universe? But yes, the child could destroy the whole universe, and more than that, as Putana found out. The next verse, Janani uparyatam prasya swadanam upalalito samvishyavara samyayam sukam susupatur vraje. After dining sumptuously on the delicious food given them by their mothers and being pampered in various ways, the two brothers lay down upon their excellent beds and happily went to sleep in the village of Vraja. And no purport, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also, no comment. Evam sabhagavan Krishno vrindavana chara kvachit yayo ramam riti rajan kalinnim shakivirita. O King, the Supreme Lord Krishna thus wandered about the Vrindavan area, performing his pastimes. Once, surrounded by his boyfriends, he went, without Balaram, to the Yamuna river. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, after finishing the description of the Gopastami pastimes in Kartik, the pastimes in summer are told. Balaram was not present because Rohini kept him home to take a Shanti bath on his birthday. So we are now shifting from our previous encounter with Dhenukasura. Dhenukasura being the emblem of materialism, being taking the form of an ass, because he spends his time just simply preoccupied by material things. And Dhenukasura, who was like a yaksha is guarding some material properties. So Dhenukasura in that way guarding the material assets under his control. And so he became obsessed, and as a result he became very envious, and that became the cause of his destruction. Because in this material world, as soon as we develop some attachment to anything, then there's competition. It's like we can always see the chairs during the Bhagavatam class, you know, it's like it always seems there are never enough chairs, you know, and then someone is looking at the chairs. And then there are those who have their name written on the chairs in invisible ink, but everyone knows their name is there. So this is the material world. There's always competition. Always competition for a spot. You know, you have your spot where you sit every day, and then one day someone else is sitting there, and you're looking like, what's that? He's sitting in my spot. My spot. That is the nature of the material energy. Competition is there. Therefore, it is not surprising that one who becomes attached to material objects becomes envious, because there's that competition, and I'm not going to let him take it. Elbow and whatnot, and so on. So, in this way, Dhenukasura had become so envious that he had become a man-eating ass, which is quite gross. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his Chaitanya Shikshamrita, lists all the demons, and all these demons are like prototypes that represent a particular anartha. And then he points out that the demons that were killed by Balaram And the demons that were killed by Krishna, there's a distinction between the two categories. That the demons that were killed by Balaram represent anarthas that we have to give up ourselves voluntarily, whereas the demons killed by Krishna are anarthas that are being purified in the process of devotional service. In other words, we have to ourselves give up our material entanglement. That we have to do by our endeavor. And of course, particularly, material entanglement simply means these four principles or these four activities of adharma. So therefore we see that the four regulative principles are basically representing that point, giving up the gross sinful activities in the material world. And we can see that we have to do, that we have to consciously embrace, that we have to do by our effort. That is not just done automatically. Although we can say to anyone, just chant Hare Krishna. Yeah? Just chant Hare Krishna. And we don't talk about regulative principles initially. But then after some time, it comes. And initiation is interesting because initiation forces us, we take vows to act on a higher platform than we would actually spontaneously act. And therefore, naturally, these vows, they feel a little like tight sometimes. Sometimes it's a struggle. Yes. And in some cases, sometimes a struggle, always a struggle. In due course of time, that struggling element goes down. Right? It is said that gradually the influence of Maya decreases, and as we are advancing, as we come to Nistha in devotional service, after Anartha Nivriti, after the purification of the heart has happened to an extent, then we become free. Not completely free, but much more free from the influence of Maya. Only on the platform of Krishna Prem is there absolutely no influence of the material energy. So, okay, we saw that. So Krishna went without Balaram to the Yamuna river with the cowherd boys, and Balaram had to stay home in relation to some ritual that was performed for his birthday. Ata gavascha gopascha nidagata papirita dustam jalam papustasya strisnartavisadusitam. At that time, the cows and cowherd boys were feeling acute distress from the glaring summer sun. Afflicted by thirst, they drank the water of the Yamuna river, but it had been contaminated by poison. Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur says, ignoring Krishna, who was walking slowly behind, the cows ran quickly toward the Yamuna to slake their intense thirst. The cowherd boys ran after them. Yes, that explains it, because otherwise how is it? The cowherd boys were going to drink water from the Yamuna and it was poisoned, and Krishna didn't say anything? Yeah? That doesn't make sense. But now with this explanation we understand. Krishna was lagging behind. They were all very thirsty. So the cows, they ran, and the boys ran after them, and Krishna didn't that day. Text 49 and 50. Visambastatupasprisya daivupahata chitasa nipiturvyasava sarve salilanta kurudvaha vikshatan vai tata bhutan Krishna yogeshwara iksayam vrittavarsinya sanatan samajivayat. As soon as they touched the poisonous water, all the cows and boys lost their consciousness by the divine power of the Lord and fell lifeless at the water's edge. O hero of the Kurus, seeing them in such a condition, Lord Krishna, the master of all masters of mystic potency, felt compassion for these devotees, who had no lord other than him. Thus he immediately brought them back to life by showering his nectarian glands upon them. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. The word Daiva means belonging to Deva, the Lord. The cows and cowherd boys whose intelligence was covered by Krishna's Leela Shakti appear to lose their lives. Deva upahati chetasa, though they are eternal. Krishna covered them with yogamaya potency to perfect his pastimes. So, when Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is saying that they are eternal, then we also understand that the associates of Krishna are not ordinary personalities. When Krishna appears in Vrindavan, then his associates are also of the transcendental caliber, and not just ordinary personalities. Te sampratitta smritaya samuttaya jalantika asan suvismita sarve viksamana parasparam. Regaining their full consciousness, the cows and boys stood up out of the water and began to look at one another in great astonishment. And I'll read text 52 as well, then the chapter is finished. Anvamam satatatrajan Govinda anugrahiksitam pitva visam paritasya punarutan manaha. O king, the cowherd boys then considered that although they had drunk poison and in fact had died, simply by the merciful glance of Govinda, they regained their lives and stood up by their own strength. So that was text 52. We'll go back to text 51 and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's comment. Returning to consciousness, the cowherd boys thought, we were dead. So how did we come back to life? What medicine or mantra was used to remove the poison? Thus looking at one another with great surprise, they spoke with their eyes, friend, do you know the secret? Then one Sakha answered with a glance, I know how we were saved. Then he spoke, listen, I remember the name-giving ceremony of Krishna and Balaram, wherein Gargaracharya said, this child will very easily save you from all dangers. This is the secret. Then with complete absorption, all the cowherd boys remembered some Smritaya, Krishna, their most lovable object, Pratikta. By this they became all astonished. Suvismita. So the cowherd boys, they died, although they are eternal, but they died anyway. The material bodies died, right? And they were unconscious, as is what is happening with death. Srila Prabhupada explains that death means we sleep for 7 months, and points out that one takes birth again and so on, stays in the womb, and then comes to consciousness at one point. So maximum sleep 7 months. Have a good sleep. That's about it. But not really dead. Yes. The cowherd boys, they were remembering though. So they were remembering that Garga Muni, at least one of them, that Garga Muni had stated at the name-giving ceremony that this boy can easily protect you from all dangers. So in this way, they could fully take shelter of Krishna without recognizing him as the Supreme Lord. Because after all, Gargaracharya had said that he was as good as the Supreme Lord, not that he was the Supreme Lord. Right? So in this way, they could also forget that he was the Supreme Lord and take him like an ordinary person, and in this way they could see themselves as equal, although Krishna was special. So at this point, they're not so much focused on the equality, they're focused on the special nature of Krishna. And this boy is now, has the power to save us, but at the same time though, that's it. He's a boy like us. So they didn't enter into a sense of awe and reverence and recognizing Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because that would have destroyed that sense of equality, that sense of intimacy. Well, it's interesting because in the next chapter we will enter into Kaliya appearing from the Yamuna and grabbing Krishna in the coils and holding Krishna in the coils. And as Kaliya was holding Krishna in his coils, it went on forever. It is even described that in the Nectar of Devotion that Balaram was once dreaming, and that Balaram said, "Oh Krishna, free yourself now from these coils, free yourself now, because it is just, we are just in too much anxiety, Oh, everyone is in too much anxiety, so please free yourself from these coils." And that was the situation, and you can imagine what the cowherd boys felt like. I mean, it was a day and a half. First, they go to the Yamuna, they drink water, it's poisoned, they die. Next moment, they're revived. We were dead. Next moment, Krishna is in the water, in the coils of that snake. They almost died again out of anxiety. So, what you call a day and a half. You can imagine the cowherd boys coming home after that, going, "Oh, that was a day." Sure. Yes, it was. It was. So, somehow or other, Krishna was simply making all these arrangements to increase their attachments. Earlier the other day, when Hridaya Chaitanya gave class, there was some discussion about whether all the cowherd boys are eternally liberated personalities, or whether there are some cowherd boys who may also be undergoing a last little bit of purification. Yes, there are some cowherd boys, just like there are some gopis who are just new, who have newly come to the pastimes of Krishna. Right? Although we did, in that description, it wasn't mentioned that the cowherd boys that were described were like that. But amongst all the cowherd boys, there were certainly some who were just taking one last birth in the pastimes of Krishna and then getting purified before they would go back to the spiritual world. Just as when Krishna played his flute and attracted the gopis, and yes, how at that time the gopis, some could not come. They were kept home by their relatives, and these gopis, they went through great pain in separation, and they were getting purified. Is that your parking spot?
Don't want to block.
Yeah, no, you don't want to block the door. That's nice. It's a good parking. Anyhow, yes, so the nature of devotional service and the nature of of associating with Krishna is that purification eternally carries on. Because Krishna is the supreme pure. And when we are purifying, when we are with Krishna, then we are always purified. That is the nature of Krishna. As soon as one is with Krishna, one is purified. So even these eternal associates of Krishna are still being purified. So the cowherd boys are going through all these motions, right, of all these pastimes. And it's not just mild, as we see, it's an intense emotional experience. It's overwhelming. It sort of shakes up everything. Right? I mean, if you die, that's kind of shocking. Yeah? I mean, it's like, no, we are already like, I almost died. Right? And this case, it's not almost, it happened. It happened. I once had a dream, and in this dream, for some reason, I was being captured by some personalities and tied up on the Rath Yatra cart, and then they set fire to the Rath Yatra cart. Yeah, so it was I had a fever, actually, malaria fever, when this was going on. Yes. So, but this is what happened. So I was on the Rath Yatra cart, and I was thinking in my dream, no problem, Jagannath will save me. But he didn't. I burned. I died. So that was such a shock. I didn't expect, because it's that he'll surely, I'll wake up. Now I'm going to wake up, and it's all a dream, right? But I didn't wake up, and I actually died. Anyway, that was a funny dream. But for the cowherd boys, it was more than a dream. They actually died. So it's kind of shocking. And so Krishna was taking them through tremendous emotional experiences. Now for us who are self-centered, that would probably be the highlight of the day, you know, like, we died. But for the cowherd boys, the highlight was not that they died. The highlight was that Krishna revived them. I mean, just see that we died, yeah, okay, we died. That's true, it is shocking. It was a shocking thing. But the most amazing thing is, look at Krishna. He revived us. Look at his inconceivable power, and look at like his mercy upon us. Right? I mean, he cares so much about us. So in the end, they felt Krishna's love, and that was the highlight. That was the point where their meditation stopped and where their remembrance stopped. Just see how deep, how much Krishna cares for us. That is amazing. So in this way, Krishna is increasing the love of his devotees, and he's increasing the love of the cowherd boys in this case, as he's increasing the love of the gopis, as he's increasing everyone's love. And it's not that only happens in the spiritual world. That starts right now. That starts as soon as we get in touch with Krishna. As soon as we get in touch with Krishna, he's beginning to increase our love for him. That's already happening to us. Right? Although our capacity to love is not so great at this point. We have become very dull. There's an interesting discussion between Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya after he has taken up bhakti. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya says, Tarka Shastra Jada Ami Yaicha Loha Pinda, that by studying the scriptures of logic, I have become dull like an iron bar. So it's very interesting, because usually we think that, by studying logic we become very sharp, right? And now he's saying, I've become dull, right? Like an iron bar. I've become very dull. That is the nature of material existence. So we all become dull. Our emotions become dull. They become shallow. Our capacity to feel is, although we are saying, oh, my feelings this, my feeling that, right? But actually, our feelings are shallow. That is the point. Oh, how I love the land of my birth. Whatever that land may be. Yes, but it's nothing compared to the love that the residents of Vrindavan are feeling for Vrajabhumi. That is so much deeper. Our love is shallow. So whether it's for the place, or for a person, or for our dog, or for our car, whatever it is, shallow. Yeah, shallow love. What to do. So our capacity for emotions may not be so deep, but Krishna is making arrangements to increase our attachments immediately. And he inspires his devotees. Krishna, as the devotees are turning towards Krishna, and as the devotees are trying to serve Krishna, Krishna also reciprocates with them. Like today, we're looking here at this darshan with the super backdrop, right? There's no other word for it. It's a super backdrop, right? It's like just, it's sort of, the backdrop almost jumps off the altar. That's how bright it is, right? It's like, and it's really like highlights Radha Gopinath and all the deities, and it's amazing. So now we can think, wow, who made that, right? Oh yes, well, so and so. Okay, did so and so make that, or was so and so inspired by Krishna to make that? We have to also see Krishna is also in the mix. Krishna is part of it all. Krishna, he inspires someone to make a certain outfit, a certain backdrop. If the false ego doesn't too much get into the way, and so on. I mean, a backdrop with your signature above the deities may be a little bit too much false ego. So like this, but if we sincerely try to serve, then Krishna will also manifest through us. And all this service is making us more and more attached to Krishna. So Krishna is making many arrangements to increase his attachment. Like this is a darshan that one can remember. Right? Maybe today when we go into our rooms and we think, what outfit was the deity wearing? At least something bright. that much we can manage. It was bright, yes. It was. It still is. Yes, so like this, Krishna is engaging the devotees. And the devotees are becoming empowered by Krishna. They become empowered by Krishna in service. That empowerment may be taking place in different ways. It may happen in a mystic way, like Krishna from within is giving us some power, or it may just come to us in parampara. Simply because parampara is not only the 32 names that are there from Krishna to up to Srila Prabhupada, right? And then whoever comes after. It's not only that disciplic succession that we find mentioned of the acharyas, but parampara is everywhere. Parampara is in every service, because there are devotees who know. When I came to Vrindavan, I was trained by Gunarnava in accounts, and Gunarnava was trained by Prabhupada in accounts. And Gunarnava always told me, Prabhupada did it like this and told us to do it like that. It was actually, I hate accounts, to be honest. I can't stand them. I'd rather just spend the money and keep no accounts at all. But all right, we have to keep accounts, I understand. So I was trained, but it was actually a nice training because everything was connected to Prabhupada. Prabhupada said we should do this, Prabhupada said we should do that. And then I did that, and then, okay, yeah, well, then we're going to do it that way. And everything is like that, right? We're told how to cook, we're told how to dress the deities. It's not just something is preserved. Srila Prabhupada instructed some of his disciples. Yamuna was instructed in many ways. Kishori was told how to cook for Krishna and Balaram in quite detail, and that they were hungry young boys, and there were many others, right? So we should understand many things like that came to us in Parampara, and that Parampara is still alive. Right? There's still something left over from those instructions from Srila Prabhupada, and it has carried forward, and that is very nice. So Parampara is much more elaborate than just the lineage of the Acharyas. And so Krishna is utilizing his servants who become empowered either from within or from without by the Vaishnavas, who are just instructing us and who are teaching us how to do. And in this way there is a transcendental culture, a spiritual culture, and that's which goes back to the Acharyas and to the scriptures. And this culture is helping us to develop our attachment to Krishna. In Vrindavan, just behind the guest house, there is an ashram, and they are chanting a mantra, which I will not repeat, but it looks a little bit like the names of the deities in our temple. Prabhupada said you can say Nitai Gaur Radhesham Jai Krishna Balaram, right? And so they were chanting a particular mantra with the names of Nitai Gaur and the names of Radhesham and so on, and they're into it. They're really into it. They have kirtans and they are into it. And if you have in the guest house, if you have room number 10 or room number 20 or room number 30, then you are one of the lucky few who are going to hear this. Therefore, mark my words, if you stay in the guest house, avoid 10, 20, 30 if you can, right? Because it's too much. Anyway, these mantras, right, are then, they're not bona fide, but as their guru Charandas Babaji told, these were the last words that he spoke. So they took it. This is it then, the final instruction. We have to chant. So then they chanted that instead of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And they get very ecstatic also. Prabhupada says, yes, they chant the name of Nitai Gaur. But the full understanding is not there. The full understanding is not there. First of all, one can chant individual names from Krishna. Jaya this, Jaya that, and isn't it nice? Oh yes, it's nice. But it's not as nice as the Maha Mantra. Because the Maha Mantra contains a relationship. It is Krishna, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is Hare, which represent the Ladini Shakti, the pleasure potency, or devotional service. So there's a relationship there. And the result, Ramanti Yogino Nante, is transcendental happiness. So like that, the Maha Mantra tells us, by being fully absorbed in devotional service, following in the footsteps of Srimati Radharani, who is the personification of that pure devotional service, we serve the all-attractive Supreme Lord, then who is attracted by such service, because the name Krishna has two meanings, one who can attract, and the other meaning is one who is attracted by service. So, and then the result is happiness. So how much is there in the Mahamantra? An intricate relationship between the names. These are not just three names that are just randomly chanted. No, there's an intimate relationship. So when names of the Lord are randomly chanted, there will not be the same result. There's a further complication with that particular group in Vrindavan, because they are saying that Gaur Nitai, that Gaur is Krishna and that Nityananda is Radharani. So they got the tattva a little wrong also. So yeah, the tattva is carefully preserved in this movement. And without the tattva, without properly understanding the philosophy, one cannot fully capture the ras. One cannot fully experience the depth of the emotions. So therefore the tattva is very important and must be preserved. I was, so the other day I was in the mood for tattva, and so you can't always listen to ras, you know. So I was in the mood for tattva, so I was listening to a lecture of Gopi Puranadana Prabhu, right, who was really, really into it. And so he gave this lecture about Brahman, right? And he's just talking about Brahman the whole lecture. Now, many of us, as soon as you say Brahman, we sort of like go into that impersonal realm, and our head goes down and we start to sleep. Brahman. Right? To many of us, it always works when you talk about Brahman. Puts you to sleep anytime. Anyway, but the whole lecture was about how Brahman, how Brahman is actually how the purpose of the Upanishads is the same as the purpose of the Bhagavatam, and that there's no difference in the knowledge of the Upanishads and the knowledge of the Bhagavatam. Right? And these are to carry on. Not that the Upanishads were written by some impersonalists, right? And the Bhagavatam by devotees, although the Upanishads may give impersonal conclusions. Said, but within that Brahman, Bhagavan is also there, is also included. And Prabhupada gave one disciple a name, right? And when I heard that lecture, I was remembering that name. And that name was Purna Brahma. Purna Brahma. The complete Brahman. Purna Brahma. Yes? And as I was like thinking, oh, Purna Brahma, yes. He's talking about Purna Brahma. So the complete Brahman means Krishna is included. And that is the message of the Upanishads. So anyway, so that lecture's going, and this morning I was reading Chaitanya Charitamrita, and there it was. It said that the purpose of the Upanishads and of the Bhagavatam is the same. So there it is. The evidence. So it was very nice. So that was a Tattva lecture. And by appreciating that, we can also appreciate that starting with Krishna, that Brahman is also part of Krishna, and we can also appreciate it. Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma Nakang Sati Nasuk, that we can come to that Prasanatma, to that which is that happiness that is the result from Brahma Bhuta, from realizing Brahman. Yes. Because it's included. We are meant to realize Brahman. We're meant to thoroughly realize Brahman. We're meant to thoroughly realize that we're not the body, and that we have nothing to do with it, and that we therefore are undisturbed. Not only not only the ras then, a little bit of tattva as well. Because once we thoroughly understand that ras, then that tattva, then our experience of the ras will be more complete. And so, before we go to the 10th canto, we're going through all the other cantos. And like in the 2nd canto, we go to the universal form. And it's like, and then you get this whole description about how all the elements manifest. And when the, you know, and then the eyes of the universal form, the sun and the moon, and then the sense of sight was manifest, and so on. You go, okay, next page. How long is this chapter? It's just one of those chapters. It's like a little long, yeah, for the mind. But it is very important, very important. Otherwise, we will understand that Krishna is the origin of everything. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satsitananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karana. He's the cause of all causes. Very nice to know that Krishna is the original cause. But he's not only the original cause, he is involved with everything. He's personally involved with everything. All these, he's involved with the senses. He's involved with the material energy. He's involved in his expansions in so many ways. So Bhagavatam is very thoroughly showing us how Krishna is involved, personally involved with every aspect of our life. And in that way, one can very thoroughly remember Krishna by remembering all these cantos behind it. So now that we are here and seeing that the cowherd boys were not remembering that Krishna is the Supreme Lord, we do. We do. And we do not just remember that he's the Supreme Lord, but we remember that he's the Supreme Lord who's intricately connected with every aspect of the creation. And therefore, we are bowing down in great awe and reverence. Therefore, we are, of course, our awe and reverence is not that great, right? But at least we go flat on the ground, right? Or at least our nose on the ground. And that's already quite something. That's quite something. Right? All the way down on the ground. Of course, we're still proud. Still proud. Even when bowing down, even when lying and rolling in the dust, still proud. It's so deep, this pride. But all this Vaishnava etiquette is purifying us, because we're bowing down for Krishna. Every day we fall flat again before Krishna. Each time we become a little bit more purified. Maybe a little more humble. Just a little. Yeah, a little. Yeah. So, in this way, we can appreciate Krita Punya Punja. How great are these cowherd boys that they can afford the luxury of forgetting that Krishna is God. That's quite something. Quite something. I'll stop now. Any questions? Any comments?
I have a question from Chaitanya Charitamrita. In some part, Svarup Damodar is speaking about the danger of hearing from impersonalists, and I think it's connected with the pastime with Prakashananda Saraswati and Lord Chaitanya preaching to impersonalists. And he says that even one who is on a very advanced level can actually fall down, being diverted by the flowery language of the impersonalists. And I was wondering, how is that possible? Because Krishna is so attractive and much more potent than Brahman. So how is it possible that there's such a danger even at very advanced levels?
Because our material conditioning goes very, very deep. All the living beings in this material world are overcome by the delusion of desire and hate, or dvesh, envy. So it said the original cause is that dvesh. It's not that we became envious in the spiritual world. We were with Krishna and then one day we suddenly became envious. That comes a little later. But as we are in the material world, there is that sense of wanting to be Krishna. The last snare of Maya, isn't it? Wanting to be Krishna. Therefore, even at a great level of advancement, up to bhava, Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur explains, up to bhava there is an influence of Maya. At praying, there is no influence of Maya. So at praying one doesn't fall down, one cannot fall down. But from bhava it is said there is some influence of Maya. Still, a shadow, he says, a shadow reflection of Maya. He says there is still some contamination due to previous Vaishnava aparadha. There is a sense of klesh, a sense of suffering, even in bhava. So therefore, from very advanced platforms, one can still fall down the last snare of Maya.
I'm wondering particularly why would one get attracted to Brahman?
Oh, not to Brahman. Tattvam asi. I am that too. The biggest false ego is not to be the temple president. It's not the biggest to be the GBC. It's not the biggest to be the president of the United States or China. That is debatable. It's not the biggest. Like the biggest thing you could possibly be is God. Do you realize that you are God? You are. Just look in the mirror. Look in the mirror and tell yourself. Would you dare to do that? Okay. It's not advised. It's tricky because it goes deep. So that we don't.
Maharaj, we were speaking, that's important that we read all the cantos before the 10th canto. So my question is, why did Srila Prabhupada first publish the Krishna book before finishing the other cantos of the Bhagavatam?
Just like Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami was writing the Chaitanya Charitamrita in his old age. So even in the beginning of the book, he already gave the later pastimes in summarized form. Yeah. In case he would not be able to complete the work. So Srila Prabhupada started his mission in ripe old age, and he was racing against time. Once you pass 70, you can croak any moment, and no one will say you didn't get old. You did. Yeah. Maybe not super old, but old. Yeah. Died in the 70s. He was old. Yeah. So Srila Prabhupada then was considering that he might not be able to finish it, and that it is very important for us to particularly know the pastimes of Krishna directly, because that's the purpose of the Bhagavatam. Then, when I, as a karmi, I got two books, right? One was Bhagavad Gita, one was Krishna book. Krishna book I found hard to read for various reasons, and one reason was every 3 sentences He said the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And you know, like, it seemed like so much, you know, like, here they are again, those words, you know, and again, those words, every paragraph, there it was, Supreme Personality of God, Supreme Personality of God, Supreme Personality of God. Who's Krishna? Supreme Personality of God. I mean, so Prabhupada made sure that we understood the Bhagavatam also very properly in the form of the Krishna book. So the way he wrote the Krishna book, he made sure that it was approached with the proper attitude. Although there are very intimate things within the Krishna book. Like that. Like that he gave us the Krishna book. Yeah, and we see that Prabhupada didn't finish the purports, unfortunately, to the 10th canto. Of course we have all the commentaries of the Acharyas now that we are looking at. And but yeah, how nice would it have been if it would have had. But then we have the Krishna book. And it's interesting, I was reading this Sarartha Darshini, Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on the 10th canto. And then I was reading Sanatana Goswami's commentary on the 10th canto. And it's like studying all these things, right? And then there was one devotee, a Prabhupada disciple, who from America, who visited South Africa. And he had spent most of his spiritual life just reading the Krishna book. That was his thing, reading the Krishna book. And then he was giving lectures just quoting Krishna book. And he was really quoting. And as he was quoting, he said, hey, I read that in Srimad Chakravarti Thakur. I said, oh, I read that from Sanatana Goswami. Oh, yeah. And it was all in there. It was all in there. It was super interesting. Yeah. So you could just read the Krishna book and everything would be perfect. One year we had a marathon here, a book distribution marathon, and we distributed Krishna books, only Krishna books. And we were also only reading Krishna book. I remember that marathon. It was really nice. I was here in this yatra that year. It was lots of fun. Just reading Krishna book and distributing Krishna book. Nothing better. Every night, 15 minutes before taking rest with some hot milk. Krishna book. Yes, sir.
You said that even Krishna's associates become purified by associating with Krishna. So it seems like they undergo some transformation also.
Yes. Their love is increasing. In Adi Lila chapter 4, it is described how the love of Srimati Radharani is eternally increasing. So the same in all the associates of Krishna. Their love for Krishna is eternally increasing. And that is the purification. Purification means our love for Krishna is increasing.
It seems like when we speak about purification, that there is something that needs to go.
No, that's the beginning of the purification. In the lower stages of purification, there's something that needs to go. In the more advanced stages of purification, there's something that needs to come in. More Krishna. More Krishna. More service to Krishna. More glorification of Krishna. More love for Krishna. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Swami ki jai.